Hello, my name is Ariel. This is our second reflection video. In this video, we will cover several readings, videos, and sources that primarily focus on the topic of interconnectedness. I'm joined by Victor, Monica, and Paloma. So let's dive in and hear from Victor first.
Hello, my name is Victor, and I will be doing a summary of chapter 6. So, in this chapter, Toffler discusses the concept of modularity in human beings and how society is increasingly moving towards a model where individuals are seen as interchangeable parts in a larger system. And the key points that I found is that modularity in society is that is as the society becomes more technology advanced. People are increasingly treated like module components that can be moved, replaced, or discarded. And key number two, impact on identity is where it affects people's sense of identity and self-worth, which leads to detachment. And key number three, works and relationships is where modularity extends to both work and personal relationships, and that in the workplace, employees are often expected to adapt quickly to new roles, but in a personal relationship, there be more transit and less stable connections. And then number four, adaptation and flexibility is where Toffler discusses the need for individuals to be highly adaptable and flexible to thrive in a modular society, and consequences where physiological and social consequences of living in a modular society includes increase of stress and sense of impairments. And then summary for video number one, how will society change as the youth populations? So these are the key points that I found, is that the fastest growing segments within this group are those age of 15 and older and even 100 and older. And additionally, social determinants of health includes where people live, have a significant impact on longevity, and then inside of a public health perspective, that the aging population will lead to increased demand for health in healthcare services due to higher prevalence of chronic conditions, and healthcare and that healthcare costs will rise, and there will be more cases of Alzheimer's and related dementias, creating a greater burden on families and healthcare systems. And then a source that I found that's almost between both of them is from the public health reports, and it says, and the title is The Social Determinants of Health. It's time to consider the causes of the causes. And the key point that I found is that exceptional examples of health indicators, meaning settings and subgroups in which health does not necessarily improve with greater social advantages, can be found, and that there may be thresholds above which a higher degree of a given social factor no longer yields better health, and that exceptions would also be expected as the effects of any given factor or contingent upon the presence of myriad other factors such as social, economic, physiological, environmental, genetic, and epigenetic, and that current knowledge suggests ways to collaborate with others to improve health outcomes for social disadvantaged population. At a minimum, appreciation of some of the social factors that influence health-related behaviors and health status itself can help clinical providers to develop more effective treatment plans. Thank you.
George Simmel. In The Metropolis and Mental Life, 1950, George Simmel explores how living in large cities affects people's minds and social interactions. He argues that the nature of urban life makes people rely on intellectual responses to protect themselves, often weakening emotional connections. Simmel focuses on how city life challenges people's ability to stay independent and unique in the face of social and economic pressures. Key takeaways. One, city living bombards people with constant stimuli, causing them to rely more on thinking rather than feeling to cope with the fast pace and complexity. Two, Simmel discusses how people in cities become indifferent to things and people because of overstimulation and the dominance of the money economy. 3, the city's focus on money reduces relationships to transactions, promoting a rational way of living that weakens individuality. 4, cities offer more freedom but also lead to social isolation and detachment due to the impersonal nature of urban life. And questions related to the reading. Can cities evolve to help people stay emotionally connected while keeping their independence? The video Afrofuturism mixes sci-fi and social justice explains Afrofuturism, a movement combining science fiction with African and African American culture. It challenges the mostly white focus in sci-fi by imagining the future from a Black perspective, showing how Black people can reclaim their identity and overcome challenges. Through art, Afrofuturism envisions a future where Black people succeed on their own terms. Key takeaways: 1, Afrofuturism brings Black stories into science fiction, addressing the lack of representation in the genre. 2, artists like Sun Ra, George Clinton, and Janelle Monáe combine Black history with visions of a better future, connecting past struggles to future hopes. 3, Afrofuturism critiques racial inequality and imagines a future without those barriers. Artists like Andre 3000 encourage Black pride and empowerment. 4, Afrofuturism encourages Black people to imagine a better future with pride and equality, offering hope for overcoming social limits. And a question related to the video: can other marginalized groups use similar movements to reshape their future? Article George Simmel, How Living in Big Cities Affects the Way We Think from Big Think, explains Simmel's views on how life in big cities impacts people's thoughts and behaviors. Simmel argues that the constant flow of stimuli in the nature of city life makes people emotionally detached and indifferent. He describes this as a blossy attitude where individuals become numb to the world around them due to overstimulation. Key takeaways: 1, city dwellers experience so much sensory input that they build emotional defenses. 2, they stop caring about details of life, feeling that nothing is particularly important or exciting. 3, Simmel contrasts urban life with rural life, where personal emotional relationships are deeper. In small towns, people tend to know each other, while in cities, interactions are impersonal and driven by reason and necessity. And unanswered questions related to the article. Can city design help foster deeper connections and reduce overstimulation?
Today, I'll be talking about the Gale summary. In chapter 1, it talked about the human dimensions. A common feature of almost all cities is that people who use city space in great numbers have been increasingly poorly treated. There's an increase in car traffic and a forced city space. It also talked about the 4 goals: a lively, safe, sustainable, and healthy city, as well as the shaping the city and meeting place, which talks about the traffic and then the walking places. In chapter 2, it talks about the sense and scale. The main focus was the social field of vision. It was about the limits, the horizontal and linear walking space, and sensory impressions, as well as the 4 communication, which is intimate, personal, social, and public distance. And knowledge of senses and content provides valuable planning. And lastly, the shattered scale, which talks about the car traffic and then build with the human scale. And one of the quotes I chose is a man's greatest joy, which is from a poem. And it kind of ties in this idea and how it's taking into consideration how we socialize with other people, with other cultures, and how we socialize with different type of cities. My next source is a video. It talks about the stabilized housing market and how they passed a Fair Housing Act in 1934, which is about a long-term mortgage with fixed interest rate and create home ownership. The problem was redlining. It was about value and people. It was about the brown and black communities and how they were in these poorer sections and racial covenants, and the whole idea was not just about discriminating against these communities, but enriching white people. As you can see in the photo, how they section off these areas and how these areas were the bad ones were called the slums, and then it was from somewhat good, and then the best. So hence it manufactured urban poverty. My next source is an academic journal. The academic journal explores a research that intends to inform theoretical and empirical discussions by exploring how social justice is included into resilience. The article delves into the ways in which social equity can be taken into account while designing urban plans. It highlights the inclusive, equitable resilience method should be prioritized alongside improving cities' capacity to withstand shocks in resilience planning. The author contends that resilience initiatives could unintentionally worsen current disparities if social fairness isn't taken into account. The author presents a framework that incorporates social equality into urban resilience planning, emphasizing the significance of inclusive decision-making process, equitable resource distribution, and community engagement. So it kind of begs the question, how can we make a city that has social equity that takes into consideration a growing population, a growing diverse of people of culture, and how can it be beneficial and see actual improvements of these cities?
Next, I talk about Paloma. Next, she would talk about George Simmel's The Metropolis and Mental Life. So she talks about how this examines how urban living fosters emotional detachment and a blasé attitude due to overwhelming stimuli. In contrast, Afrofuturism blends science fiction with African and African American culture, challenging racial representation and envisioning a future where Black identity flourishes. Together, these perspectives emphasize the impact of environment on social interactions and identity, highlighting the need for deeper connections in a complex world. First off, I would start with Victor. Victor, he talks about the growing population aged 85 and older will increase healthcare demand and costs due to more chronic conditions and dementia, straining families in the system. Additionally, health outcomes for some groups may not improve with greater social advantage, emphasizing the need for collaboration and a deeper understanding for social factors to enhance treatment for disadvantaged populations. Then lastly, I would talk about Monica's. Monica talks about the 1934 Fair Housing Act sought to promote home ownership but reinforced systematic racism through redlining and social covenants, negatively impacting Black and brown communities. Very similar, Chapter 1 critiques urban planning for neglecting residents' needs, advocating for lively and safe and walkable environments. Together, these ideas emphasize the need for equitable urban policies that promote social justice and inclusivity.